It was a violent 4th of July holiday in Chicago, marked by more than 50 shootings throughout the city, some of them deadly.
America does not have a gun violence problem. It has a Chicago problem.
Police officers here and from other districts have had their hands full responding to numerous calls and trying to maintain order. Now, during the 24-hour period, gun violence tragically claimed the lives of almost 12 people. Since the 4th of July, a series of shootings have occurred across the city. Roughly 54 people have been struck by gunfire and 11 have been killed. Just after midnight on Friday, Chicago police responded to a shots fired call in the Abla Homes housing complex in Little Italy near Troop and Hastings. According to CPD, there was an exchange of gunfire between two unknown suspects who then ran from the scene. 8 people were shot, 5 women between the ages of 18 and 74, and 3 men between 23 and 36 years old. Injuries range from gunshot wounds to the leg, head, back, knee, and groin. Then, just before 2 in the morning, police found 6 people shot on the west side on the 100 block of South Menard. CPD says there was a shootout between 2 unknown suspects who then took off. 2 women ages 18 and 20, a 15-year-old boy, and 3 men between the ages of 23 and 25 were transported to different hospitals. Police were busy yesterday after 5 people were shot in a home near 71st and Woodlawn around 6:15 in the morning. Neighbors say men in ski masks got out of 2 vehicles and fired into the home, killing 24-year-old Capri Edwards, who was shielding her 1-year-old child. Her aunt, 46-year-old Nikisha Strong, also died. 3 sons of the victims, ages 5, 7, and 8, were also shot and were in critical condition at Comer Children's Hospital.
More specifically, America has an inner city violence problem, and Chicago is a prime example of this. When people hear stats like this...
New at 5, the CDC says that nearly 40,000 people in the United States died by guns last year.
They think there's an even distribution of these gun deaths across the country, but this is far from the truth because murders in the U.S. are very concentrated. 2% of counties had 56% of the murders in 2020. 52% of U.S. counties had 0 murders. And what just happened in Chicago over the 4th of July weekend is a prime example of that. Based on an ABC News article, shootings and other violence during the extended 4th of July weekend have left at least 33 people dead and injured dozens more nationwide. That means Chicago was responsible for over 30% of the gun deaths over the 4th of July weekend. But this isn't new. As a matter of fact, it's a thing. Every 4th of July, a bunch of people get shot and killed in Chicago. If the guns were the issue, these deaths would be seen widespread throughout the country and a lot higher. Instead, they're concentrated in particular parts of the country and some of our big cities. At what point are we going to stop this goofy behavior of acting like there isn't a very specific problem going on in these places that have nothing to do with guns? Then the media has the audacity to call these shootings mass shootings. But that's what they do. They pad actual mass shooting stats with inner city street violence so that they can hide the fact that mass shootings are actually pretty rare. The reason people think they're so common is because the media and anti-gun groups keep calling everything a mass shooting. 2 gangs shooting at each other isn't a mass shooting. 1 person shooting at another person amongst other people isn't a shooting. A drive-by shooting isn't a mass shooting. It's all street violence. The reasons the distinctions matter is because the only way we can solve the issue is you first have to understand why they're happening in the first place. And each problem requires a different solution. You don't try to solve self-deletions the same way you would try to solve street violence. You don't solve school shootings the same way you would try to solve domestic violence. And you definitely don't try to keep people safe by taking away their best means to protect themselves from violence. I find it funny that anytime a gun is used in a gun death, it's a gun problem. But when people use guns to save their lives, they don't call it a gun solution. Crazy thing is, I actually love Chicago. 5 years ago, I did a mini documentary about the violence in Chicago, where I tried to address the root cause of the violence in Chicago. I'm slightly embarrassed to say that this is my first time in Chicago. Along with New York and LA, they're cities people expect you to go to early in life. I've always heard great and horrible things about the city. Some people can never stop telling the world how awesome it is. Then there are those people who refer to it as Chirac and suggest that I pack a bulletproof vest and bring extra magazine. I've long known of the city's history of gun control and violence, so my expectations for the trip were all over the place.
On the national stage with the conversation, they paint the picture that most black people are anti-gun. But yet here we are in the heart of Chicago, And you're telling me the opinions are all over the place.
All over. And I did the same thing in St. Louis. You've had your own dealings prior to becoming an officer, and that's actually what made you want to become an officer, correct?
Yeah.
And the same thing in Los Angeles. And I did the same thing in Albany. So I'm not just running my mouth. I've tried to get to the bottom of these things, but I'm only one person. This part of the conversation is what needs to happen on a national level, not gun control. Because if you solve the inner city violence issue, the gun homicide rate plummets. And one more thing that really just kind of irks my nerve a little bit when we start having these national conversations about gun violence and mass shootings and whether or not armed citizens stop these types of mass shootings. And the other side is always talking about, oh, it rarely happens. But what they don't mention is that they rarely happen in terms of a citizen stopping a mass shooting with a firearm. It's because most mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. So if most shootings happen in gun-free zones and the people who are there are not allowed to carry their guns, kind of makes sense why they don't happen as often as they probably should. But it also is a reminder as to those laws that they put in place that were allegedly supposed to keep those people safe in those mass shootings, they didn't work. And so it reminds you that you are your own first responder. You are the militia. Because when it matters, no one else is going to be there except for you. You need to have your gun with you because nobody else is going to do it for you. And that's why I can't stand these gun control laws, because all they do is seek to disarm you. But as a reminder, I made the I'm the Militia hats, shirts, and drinkware to remind people that you are the militia, you are your first responder, and you are the one responsible for your safety. Now you have the perfect gear to remind yourself too. So I'll put a link in the description section of this video. Go ahead and check that out. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. One thing's for certain and two things are for sure. Politicians and tech giants don't want gun content to be recommended to you. And we're all fighting this culture war together. Now you can help do your part by liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel, but most importantly, sharing this video with at least one person. Together we can stop the suppression of our 2A rights. And don't forget to click the link in the description section of this video for the products that I mentioned in this video.